In today's video, we'll set up and configure the latest version of EmuDeck, version 2.1. The EmuDeck team has made a number of enhancements in this release that make setting it up a bit easier. There are also some cool new tools included, such as the USB transfer wizard, updated Steam Rom Manager, ability to download new themes within Emulation Station, and much more. In this video, we'll cover all of this from beginning to end. I'm John, and welcome to Wagner's Tech Talk. Before we begin, there are a few things you're going to need. First off, it'll come as no surprise, you'll need a Steam Deck. Any 64, 256, or 512GB version will be fine. And while not required, it's a good idea to pick up a U3A2 micro SD card for installing your games. The capacity you choose is up to you. I went with this 1TB Lexar card that has worked out well. Next, you'll need a way to copy files to the micro SD card. There are several options we'll discuss. You may already have a USB drive that has some games that you want to copy to your Steam Deck. The two types of files you'll need to copy are the BIOS and games or ROM files. BIOS files aren't needed for every emulator, though several will require them, and essentially it's the firmware used to provide runtime services for system or console. ROMs are the games themselves. As these files are copyrighted material, I can't provide direct links on where to find them. However, if you check the BIOS and ROM sections of the guide linked down below, you'll find some hints that may be helpful to you. They are easily found using your favorite search engine. Let's briefly touch on a few ways to connect a drive directly to the Steam Deck. The least expensive way is to use a USB Type-A to USB Type-C adapter. You can also use the same adapter with a USB stick, and additionally some drives come with a USB-C connection that can be plugged directly into the port on the Steam Deck. My preference is to use a dock, such as this Park Sung dock, which can power the Steam Deck, provides 3 USB 3.0 ports, Ethernet, and HDMI to your TV or monitor. You simply connect the USB cable from the dock to the deck, and you can use a keyboard, a mouse, connect to HDMI, and any external storage device containing your BIOS and game files. This is what I'll be using throughout most of this video. If you already have a micro SD card installed and formatted on your Steam Deck, you can skip this next quick step. If not, press the Steam button, move down to Settings, then System, and click the button to the right of Format SD Card, followed by pressing the Confirm button. Again, you only need to do this step if you're installing a new micro SD card. While a keyboard and mouse isn't required, it'll certainly make setting up EmuDeck much easier. On the Steam Deck, press the Steam button and move down to the Power option, then select Switch to Desktop. Now that we're in desktop mode, you'll see the Firefox browser icon in the lower left of the taskbar. Click that and type in emudeck.com. On the right of the page, you'll see a link to the download page. Go ahead and click that link, and then the button for Download the EmuDeck Installer. You'll then see a prompt to copy the installer to your desktop and execute it from there. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll click the OK button, then click the link to open the folder, and simply drag and drop the file to our desktop and select Move Here. Next, double-click the emudeck.desktop.download icon. When the prompt appears, click the Continue button. When EmuDeck starts up, you have two options, Easy Mode and Custom Mode. Both are pretty easy, so we'll select Custom Mode and click the Continue button. You'll then be asked where do you want your emulation and ROM subdirectories to be created. If you've installed a micro SD card, I highly recommend using that. If you don't, you can select internal storage and move them later if you decide to do so. I'll leave the SD card selected and click Next. We'll obviously select Steam Deck here, but the Win600 and other devices may appear here in the future. Once selected, click Next. And now it's time to select what emulators we want to enable. Any of them that have a gray background are not selected and won't be installed. Dolphin, for example, is for the GameCube and Wii. DuckStation is for PS1. Citra is for 3DS, etc. You'll find a link to the EmuDeck wiki in this section of the written guide if you're unfamiliar with these. I personally enjoy playing MAME games, so I'll select that, and MGBA. Once all selections are made, click the Continue button. The screen looks very similar to the previous one, but it is different. EmuDeck can configure and optimize each of the emulators during the install process. You can deselect any that you don't want pre-configured for you, but I'd recommend not changing any selections and just click the Continue button. When playing emulators running RetroArch, which will be many of your classic consoles, you can configure automatic game saves. That is, you can play a game, and after you exit and then come back in, it'll pick up where you left off. I'm going to turn on this feature and click Continue. Retro Achievements is a community effort to provide achievements while playing your favorite retro games from PS1, PS2, and RetroArch-based emulators. If this sounds interesting to you, you can create a free account by clicking the link here. Then, enter your username and password. For now, I'll just click the Skip button. If you prefer not to see any of the snazzy bezel side art while playing the 8 and 16-bit systems listed here, you can turn off this feature and just see the black borders around the game. I prefer to have bezels, but it's totally your choice. Once done, click Continue. You can also configure the aspect ratio for classic Sega consoles as either the original 4:3 aspect ratio or 3:2, which has smaller black bars with slight horizontal distortion. I'll leave it at 4:3 and click Continue. For Super NES, you have additional aspect ratio options. Pick your preference and click Continue. For Dreamcast and N64, you can use the original 4:3 ratio or 16:9 using widescreen hacks. For now, I'll set it for 16:9 and click Continue. Similarly, for GameCube games, you have two options, 4:3 and 16:9 with widescreen hacks. Widescreen hacks may have some minor graphical issues around the left and right edges of the game, but you can easily change your mind in-game by pressing Start and D-pad right at the same time. For now, I'll set it for 16:9 and click Continue. If you prefer your handheld games to look closer to the LCD matrix display of the time, you can turn on LCD shaders. What you select is totally your own preference. I'll leave it off and click Continue. CRT shaders can also be turned on for the systems listed here if you like the original CRT look. I do, so I'll leave it turned on and click Continue. CRT shaders can also be enabled for classic 3D games. Select your preference and click Continue. Unless it was unchecked earlier, EmuDeck will also install Emulation Station DE, which provides a single interface for accessing all of your games. You can select from 3 different themes, go through each of them and select your preferred theme, and click the Next button. Based on all the selections you've made, you'll see a quick summary of what EmuDeck will install, configure, customize, and where these changes will occur. Based on the selections made, all of this will occur on my micro SD card on the Steam Deck. If everything looks good, click the Finish button to begin the installation. As you've seen here, EmuDeck has made the installation and configuration process for all of these emulators very easy. What would normally take hours of tweaking and configuring can now be done in a matter of minutes. You can always come back and make adjustments if you don't like the initial choices. Once the installation is completed, you'll see a summary screen like this one. If any of the emulators fail to install, you can run a custom reset or install the emulator from the Manage Emulator section. At this point, we'll click the Add Games button and discuss that in more detail in the next segment. Let's discuss a few ways to copy your BIOS and game files. EmuDeck now includes a USB transfer wizard that you'll see during installation. No worries if you skip this, you can find the option under Quick Actions. Select the Add More Games button. I'll use this formatted USB stick and plug it into a USB-A to USB-C adapter, then insert into the top USB-C port on the Steam Deck. You'll see a pop-up to mount the USB disk. Select that, then tap the USB drive. Select the USB disk on the left side, and then the OK button. You'll then see a button, Create EmuDeck Folders on USB drive. Click that, in the folders will be created for the BIOS, ROMs, and all the game system subfolders. Then select OK. Now click the most recent device icon and the Safely Remove button to eject the USB stick. We can now unplug it and switch over to a desktop PC to copy some files. Now on our PC, we see two folders, BIOS and ROMs. Under the ROM subfolder are mostly empty folders for all the systems installed by EmuDeck. I'll select the GB or Game Boy folder, and when I said mostly empty, it's primarily because there is a systeminfo.txt file in each that provides a bit more information on what file types are supported by the emulator. From here, I'll copy and paste a handful of Game Boy games, repeat for any additional systems you want to copy over. That includes any BIOS files that you may also want to add. Once done, safely eject the USB stick from your computer and reinsert it into the Steam Deck. Back on the Steam Deck, you'll see a button for copy your ROMs and BIOS to your Steam Deck. Click that, and all your files will then be transferred easily over to the Steam Deck. You can easily add more games to the USB stick and click the button again to copy them. In this next example, I'm going to use the dock to demonstrate how to copy files from this 4TB RetroStation disk drive to the microSD card in the Steam Deck. If you don't already have a collection of games you want to install, do check out the BIOS and ROM section of the guide for some hints on how to find what you're looking for. And of course, you can use the Firefox browser while in desktop mode to download them directly to the deck if you prefer. From here, we'll close out of EmuDeck and return to the desktop. In the lower right, if we click the Disk and Devices icon, we can see the primary, which is the microSD. There's nothing we need to change there. Restation and Share are two partitions on my connected hard drive, but we only need to mount the Share partition, which contains the games and BIOS files. So we'll click the Mount and Open button beside it. Here in the Dolphin File Manager, we can see the contents of the partition. To make copying stuff easier over to the internal microSD, we'll right-click the Dolphin File Manager icon and select Open New Window. This will allow us to see both the source drive and the destination microSD at the same time. On the right, I'll select the primary device, which is the microSD. On that device, you'll find an Emulation subfolder, and under there are two additional subfolders that we're interested in, BIOS and ROMs. If we select BIOS, you'll see I already have copied over my BIOS files to the microSD card for emulators that require them. Additionally, under the ROM subfolder, you'll see a list of all the subfolders for each system. Simply copy over any games to the Emulation ROM subfolder and the related emulator folder for EmuDeck to be able to find them. Here I'll quickly copy a few classic Atari 2600 games from the connected hard drive to the microSD card in the Emulation ROM's Atari 2600 subfolder. Repeat this step for any additional games you want to add. Once done, close out of the Dolphin File Manager and we'll go back into EmuDeck and I'll demonstrate how to make the games available to us within Steam. Now we'll discuss how to set up the Steam Rom Manager. In this version of EmuDeck, the Steam Rom Manager has been made even easier to use. The Steam Rom Manager will allow making your games visible within the Steam library. The way this is done is using parsers. After clicking the Launch button under the Steam Rom Manager tile, you'll be informed that the desktop controls will temporarily revert to the trackpad and the L2 and R2 buttons. In my case, I'm using a connected mouse and keyboard, but something to be aware of. Once loaded, you can uncheck all the parsers and then just check those that you want to appear in the Steam library. For example, it's a good idea to select Emulation Station DE and emulators at a minimum. This will allow access to your entire game library within the Emulation Station front end. However, you can also enable individual systems for parsing, such as Wii, Wii U, PS2, or whatever sets of games you want to make available. Totally up to you, though the more games you have, the more time it takes to download the artwork and save the configuration. I generally like to keep the list fairly small and access large sets of games through Emulation Station DE, such as MAME arcade games. Once all the selections have been made, click the Preview button. At this point, you'll be provided the basic steps for using Steam ROM Manager. You'll click the Parse button to scan your games. Wait until all images are downloaded and click the Save to Steam button and wait until you see Done Adding and Merging Entries. Depending on the size of your game library, this can take some time. You can also exclude individual games if there are some you don't want included. We'll now click the Parse button. At the top, you'll see Retrieving URLs while it's downloading the artwork. You'll then see the poster art for each of your games. Scroll through the list to identify any that have incorrect artwork or that you want excluded from your Steam library. At the top, I have two versions of Asteroids. One is for the Atari 2600 and the other is for the Game Boy Color, and both are using the same artwork. To view the alternate artwork, click the small magnifier icon and you can pick a different image from the list. Another thing you can do is click the left and right arrows on the image to cycle through additional artwork that was matched. Here is one for the Game Boy, so I'll use this. You can also use artwork that you download from the Steam Grid DB or your own if you prefer. There is more information on how to do that in the written guide linked below. If you find games in the list that you don't want to show up in the Steam library, you can also exclude them by clicking the Exclude button. Then click the Games to Exclude and click the Save button in the upper right. The game or games will then be removed from the list. There are additional types of artwork to be aware of. If you click the artwork type in the upper right, you can select banners, for example, which will be the artwork shown when the game is selected within Steam. Once all the changes have been made that you want to make, the most important step is to click the Save to Steam button in the lower right. Then, in the upper right, make sure you see Done Adding and Removing Entries. If you close out of Steam Rom Manager before this process is done, the games won't show up in Steam. Next, we'll take a look at some of the tools included with EmuDeck. We'll now discuss the tools and quick actions available in EmuDeck. We've already covered the USB transfer wizard, so we'll skip over that. In the quick settings, we can make any adjustments to our earlier selections regarding bezels, aspect ratios, etc. Under Manage Emulators, we can click the Update button to update all emulators, or if we're having difficulties with a specific emulator, we can reinstall or update, reset the configuration, or uninstall the selected emulator. The EmuDeck store is new in this version of EmuDeck and allows you to install some excellent free community-developed games. Power Tools is a plugin that lets you modify the CPU and GPU settings for a given emulator. You will need to enter your sudo password. If you haven't assigned one, EmuDeck will step you through it. Just be sure to write it down somewhere safe so you don't forget it. Decky Controls is a handy plugin to allow you to view the emulator hotkeys while in-game. Enter the sudo password to install it, then while in-game, press the ... button and select the socket icon and select the emulator hotkeys. The gyroscope option may be enabled for use with some Nintendo systems. Again, you'll need the sudo password assigned to be able to install this option. The EmuDeck compression tool will scan through certain ROM folders and compress the games. If you're running low on disk storage, this may be a handy option as well. If some games won't start normally, it may be that the BIOS files are missing. You can use the BIOS checker tool to see if that's indeed the case, and then copy them. The Cloud Backup tool is in beta and allows you to save your game saves to a number of cloud-based services. Cloud Services Manager will assist with cloud gaming, such as Xbox Cloud Gaming and others. We've already covered retro achievements, so we'll skip over that here. Migrate Installation is very useful if you started out installing EmuDeck on the internal SSD and instead want to transfer your files to the micro SD or vice versa. There are additional options for checking log files. However, the other option you may want to know about is the uninstall option. Here you can check out the Discord or subreddit should you have any questions or issues, or you can uninstall EmuDeck entirely from your Steam Deck. If you would like to support the EmuDeck team, you can also become a Patreon and provide them with a donation if you'd like. In the next segment, we'll briefly discuss the games and wrap up this video. Next up, gaming with EmuDeck. With everything all set up and ready to go, we can close out of EmuDeck and double-click the Return to Gaming Mode desktop icon to get back into gaming mode. If we press the Steam button and select Library, you'll find a new Collections tab. This tab contains all the games and emulators you've made available from the Steam Rom Manager. You can select one and begin playing. If you move over to the Emulation tile, here you'll find all the individual emulators installed by EmuDeck, in addition to the Emulation Station front end. Within Emulation Station, all your games are available here, regardless if you excluded any within Steam Rom Manager. On the Steam Deck, there are two important buttons to be aware of. This is your Select button, and this one is the Start button. If you'll be playing arcade games, you'll press the Select button to insert a credit, and the Start button to start the game. To exit a game, press both Select and Start at the same time. While in Emulation Station, you can press the Start button to enter the menu to scrape artwork. This allows you to download artwork and metadata for the selected systems. You can also change the themes, and a new beta feature was added that allows you to download new themes directly on the Steam Deck. Press the Start button, select UI Settings, and select Theme Downloader Experimental. From here, a list of available themes will be downloaded. Pick the theme you want to try, then go back and select Theme Set, select the theme, and when you back out, it'll be activated. The Elegance theme is just one of several themes you can check out. That brings us to the end of another video. I hope you've seen how easy it is to set up EmuDeck version 2.1 on your Steam Deck. I want to express a huge thank you to both the developers of the emulators and the EmuDeck team that have created an impressive suite of tools for playing our favorite games. I would like to remind you to check out the written guide linked below. It will have even more information that may be helpful to you. If you click the guides image on the right sidebar, you'll find many more that cover a large range of different topics. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please click the like button. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel and you would like to see more content like this in the future, please click the subscribe button. And with that, I look forward to talking with you again very soon.